right.
All right, we're live. I will hand it over to you, Timothy.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. I don't know if we want to wait another minute or two for a couple other people to show up. We have fairly full house as far as previous signups go. So maybe we'll spend another minute or two and then we'll get rolling. Another person has just entered the waiting room.
I'm fine with waiting.
Hello. LIR, right?
I don't see LIR. It's funny.
I think we should start with an introduction.
Yeah, we can do that.
Oh, here's
I can-
LIR. Okay.
So anyway, thanks everyone for taking part in this workshop tonight. I'm a co-host of Art in the Basin, Tim W. Brown. I'm Tim from the mainland here on the Zoom screen. This is one of several workshops that we've held over the past, I don't know, 2-3 years. And tonight we have an exceptional, widely published and in-tune poet, Kimberly Lyons. It says here, her 11 published books of poetry, chapbooks, and limited editions include Approximately Near and Capella. Her poems have appeared in the Prompt Book, Readings in Contemporary Poetry and Anthology, Quo Anima, Innovation in Spirituality and Contemporary Women's Poetry, and big deal here, Best American Poetry of 2023 in that anthology. So I'm very thrilled for her that she was published in that great anthology. She lives in Brooklyn, New York, and is also publisher of Lunar Chandelier Press. So welcome. Thanks, Kimberly. Kim, I guess take it away.
Okay, how do you do? Can you all hear me okay?
Hmm?
Okay. It'd be lovely if PARV and LIR could show their faces. Oh, but I got a little thumbs up, so their preference is to not put on their visual. That's cool. Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be invited to do a workshop. It's been a little while since I've run a workshop or offered a workshop, but I do host um, uh, writing salons and an art salon, and so that's how I kind of got familiar with the Zoom format. And it was the online salon started during the pandemic, as many of our online activities did. But the format of the workshop, or the idea, which I will elaborate on more in a little while after you all introduce yourselves. I want to hear who you are and what your writing challenges are, what your goals are, what your projects are first. Also, that's a way of introducing ourselves to each other. And then I'll say more about the primary idea. But it's pretty much the same topic or theme that I offered in a workshop at St. Mark's Poetry Project many years ago. It's what I feel passionate to talk about, what feels true to me and authentic to my own writing practice, with some adjustments over the years. So that's kind of where the idea came from. And we'll adjust as we go along, according to what your needs are, where you're at. I think we can have a conversation where I can offer you some ideas, and then especially at our next session, you can report back and we'll have even a more in-depth conversation about how this works for you. But I think the thing to start with is for if this is everybody's would agree, to start with you. And I think our participants are Connie, Amy, Parv, and LIR. Is that right? Okay, so Connie, I saw you first, so I'm going to just hit on you and ask you if you can introduce yourself. Others here may know you. You've maybe all know each other from other prior workshops, but if you could just tell us a little bit about your writing life and what your goals are and what your challenges are and what your projects are.
Yes. My name's Connie Taylor. I'm in Anchorage, Alaska now, but originally I was a commercial fisherman in Alaska for years.
Okay.
I wrote newspaper articles about fishing industry back then. Lately, I've been experimenting with poetry. So about the last year, I've been trying to learn more about writing poetry.
Okay, and so you've written some poetry. You've written some
Yes.
poems.
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us anything about your poems, like what are they like, Connie?
Mostly, probably some Alaska themes, some nature themes, a few personal themes about living. I've attended a number of online poetry seminars and
Perfect.
had a couple of my poems published in Alaska Women Speak, which is an Alaska magazine, and a couple published in the Georgetown Lombardi Voices.
Oh, okay. All right. So that things sound like they're moving along. That's terrific. Can you say a little bit like where, if you feel comfortable to say this, sometimes it's hard to reveal these things, but what's the impetus for you writing poetry? Can you say in a few sentences kind of what your impulse is, what you think you're reaching for or trying to express or to experience? Sometimes we're not trying to express, we're trying to record or experience.
That's a good question. I guess about 6 years ago, I started writing both memoir and flash fiction and did that for a number of years. And then I just accidentally was in a poetry seminar and got entranced with it, I guess.
Yeah, poetry is entrancing, right?
Yeah, entrancing, and it's
dances.
satisfying because you can write a poem faster than you can write a short story. And so you have a feeling of accomplishment faster than writing a story.
And don't you find that poetry kind of draws from a different area of yourself, generally speaking, than maybe flash fiction or memoir does, right? Sometimes it draws on, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, one of the most interesting things about writing poetry is that if you're writing to a prompt, sometimes you're totally shocked at what you've written.
Yeah.
It's like it comes from somewhere else. Then
that's right.
You don't have to make it up. You just let your fingers go.
And that's an experience that, beginning poets, starting poets, and widely experienced, widely known poets have that's a shared experience among many, many poets. So to me, that sounds like, I love hearing the word, unknown, shocked, it sounds like you're drawing from resources in yourself that are fresh.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
And I didn't know we're there.
That's right. So we're mysteries to ourselves.
Yes.
And poetry can help us enlarge our sense of our humanity and what the world is, right? Because sometimes the boundaries between the world and our writing selves aren't always so clear, which is something we'll get back to. Amy, how are you today?
There we go. Anne Y.
Anne. Okay, hi Anne.
With another.
My eyesight isn't perfect. That's why I'm squinting. Aha.
Right,
hi,
yeah.
Nice to meet you.
So I have been writing a long time. I thought I wanted to write novels. I'm on all genres. My problem is revising them and seeing what I want to do. And a novel is a huge information management problem in addition to all the other creative issues. I like poetry because of what Connie was saying, finding these unexpected occurrences, conjunctions. I like to I like to try to find the nugget of a thing when I'm writing a poem, and be able to concentrate on just a small aspect of the thing. I like to play. I like hearing the language and the things that people are doing. Personally would like to be able to do more of that. The stuff that I write is heavily realistic in my own experience, and I would like to be able to get, I don't know, beyond it is not quite the word, but deeper, or a little more unleashed.
Sounds like you're saying that you have a lot of information and a lot of experience, and you would like to kind of go out into that larger landscape of the imagination. And maybe you're exploring or trying to figure out how to go through that doorway, with that. Yet if you say you're highly realistic, then it sounds like that's a commitment to what feels like the real, what is the real, and what you've experienced, and you don't want to abandon that, it sounds like you're saying, but there's a deeper, wider realm that you would like to go into.
Right. It's a, maybe it's a thing that needs to be in more than one poem. Sometimes I feel like when I do succeed in writing something that's very imaginative, nobody gets it. And it's the realistic aspects that allow other people an entry point, or they can relate to it. So clearly those are useful to other people. Maybe that's not either what I want to do or the audience I want to reach, or this is not the poem to do that. So, maybe it's just kind of too many things going on at once. But also I feel like some of the imaginative stuff, to be able to allow that to exist simultaneously in our world. I live in Missouri, and I feel like we're sold as the sort of most boring place in the country, but really we're having these rich and full lives. You're the premise of the workshop, that we can go out and have field trips and generate plenty of material for poetry. I very much believe that, and have that experience.
And I 100% concur that, Missouri, geologically, historically, sensorily, it is a full embodied place just as well. Just two remarks on the obstacles that you mentioned, which many of us can really share in. If the imaginative realm, if you're able to access that in such a way that it feels as specific to you as your own experience, then you may be able to find language that describes that imaginative realm. It's helping your imagination and mind and body feel that that's as real as the grass in the meadow, in your backyard. That may help. So there are poets that have a magic that can just have a very abstract, imaginative language, and it's enchanting. Most of us are not able to achieve that right away. But for you, the challenge may be to find specific language that specifically describes that unknown place, that imaginative realm. That might be that might be an exercise for you to do. We can talk more about it if that resonates with you. Parv, how are you? Can you say more?
Hi, yes, I like writing poetry. I've been writing on and off. I love reading Emily Dickinson, Aiko, that kind of stuff.
The nugget, right? The nugget.
Yes. I like to write short, witty stuff, but I tend to go on and on and on. And I know some people like the form because it's short and sweet. I like it for that very reason. It doesn't always turn out that way. I also write prose poems. They're trying to go into that genre. I love Sylvia Plath and Sexton,
Okay,
Willa Cather. I love a lot of American poetry, even though I'm based in the UK.
okay.
Yeah, what else would you like to know? And that's why I'm here. I attended workshops before with ATB, so and I've enjoyed them. So I
Well,
thought, why not?
welcome. I'm going to ask you kind of the same thing that same question I
Course.
kind of, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I posed to Connie, which is, can you say something about if you can describe it? It's fine to grope, because if the question was put to me, I'd probably grope a little bit too. I'd struggle a little bit. But can you say what your impetus is to write poetry, as far as you understand it or you know it?
Well, my impetus is a inclination.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I'm
Okay.
not sure. I'm not sure. I used to keep a notebook under my bed late at night, and I thought, should I be doing this? And I'd write about my childhood,
Yeah.
happy memories and stuff like that. I've never questioned it because I thought if you think too much about writing, you kind of like the magic and mystery behind it disappears. So I tend to go with the flow and just follow my subconscious and conscious. I read a lot, and I think
Okay.
it manifests into my writing, if you understand.
Yes. You know, you
I
might.
can't ask you directly. I've never been published. I've had opportunities with the university presses, but I've always declined because I feel I'm
Okay.
not kind of ready. But
Okay.
I love poetry. I like the genre, short and sweet, and it suits one's concentration span. As one gets older, it tends to wane.
You know, you might be a poet that engages with what you read. I mean,
Yes,
I'm
yes,
similar. I can relate to that. So
yes,
you read poetry, it sounds like that might elicit language within yourself that then
yes.
you
Resonates.
you talk back. You want to be in that
Yes,
conversation, that kind of
yes,
conversation that you
yes,
really have in poetry.
yes, 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 yes.
I would,
You knocked the nail on the head. Thank you so much.
you
Sometimes
know,
you can't express what you want to say, but because you read a lot, you subconsciously absorb a lot. And it's a
mhm,
kind of process of osmosis. If you read a lot, you
mhm.
tend to regurgitate that kind of stuff back out, if you get what I'm saying.
Yes. Yes.
If you read a particular genre, I don't like long, lengthy novels. I like novellas, short, condensed prose, and poetry seems to sit very comfortably with me. Yes, yes.
Okay, well, Emily Dickinson's a beautiful example of that. And in some ways, you could say Sylvia Plath as well. And I would
Too
suggest
dark
for
and heavy.
any of the, yes, she's intense, but it's a very condensed,
And I like writing about the female form. There's not a
intensity.
lot written about female. Brenda Shaughnessy does a lot. Ray Almond Trout, I'm a big fan of because she writes short lines,
That's
but
right. You
sometimes
might
you
like
don't get
Elaine
the word.
Eckley's poetry as well. Do you know Elaine
Sorry?
Eckley? Do you know Elaine Eckley?
No,
You might
no.
like,
And I did a class at Doreen now a couple of months ago, and I totally loved that as well. I'm a big fan of her works. And Kim Adonisio, they did a workshop earlier on in the year. It's nice learning from poets who've been written and well established.
yes.
So, and there's another famous one, I can't think of her now. She was a lovely lady as well, like yourself. Yeah. It's nice learning from people who experience and have that knowledge and wisdom behind them. And it makes the experience of writing and reading poetry more live rather than just reading and absorbing it, like yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
I find
Yeah.
that I learn from all kinds of poets,
Yes. Dead analyze.
not always the famous and experience. But I do want to suggest for you a poet,
Please.
an American poet whose last name is EQUI. She's on, I put a link
Yeah.
to her, Elaine Eckley, very
Yep.
contemporary that I think, and witty, exactly what you said. Okay,
Thank
LIR.
you.
I hope is LIR. Hello,
Hi, yeah, I'm Lee.
Lee. Hi, Lee.
Yes, I'm sorry I cannot be
Oh,
on
no problem.
screen.
Hi, Lee.
Hi. I started writing during the pandemic, and with starting with the essay. And then I feel like first of all, English is now my first native language. So then I feel that I want to really make the words very concise or succinct. So I said, oh, maybe poetry would help me reach my goal. So I started writing poetry. And although I have 3 poems published, I really don't know much. And I learn, just from taking workshops here and there. And I write, I don't know, my style or whatever. I just write whatever that comes to my mind.
Lee, you might be a natural poet. I mean, some poets just there's poetry is like that. You don't have to quote unquote know much. certainly to write poetry and to even write, you know, singular or unique poetry, because it's going to emanate from you and there's nobody else like you. I definitely would suggest that you do try reading poetry in your own native language and in English, if that's what you're writing, poetry in English. I wasn't sure if that was the
Yeah, I
case.
write everything in English, you know, that's what
okay.
I'm trying to say. During this pandemic, I started writing in English.
Okay, but that's
Yeah.
so awesome, you know. I don't know any other languages, you know, and to write poetry in another language, that would be a very interesting challenge. It really engages your mind and your soul. I think during the course of the workshop, let's find if we can find some poets that once we get to know you better, that might
Mhm.
be of interest to you, just to offer more depth and more background and give you more ideas about form. You know,
Um,
and see if that works for you.
I
Is-
think if you have to say something like a genre in a form, I think my probably like I prefer freestyle, free words
Absolutely.
or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. In other words, not a form or a rhymed poetry or something like that.
Although some do, you know, some of that's why, you know, I know nothing, you know, like a terminology, you know, I just feel it's another foreign, you know, terrain, you know, area, you know, I'm like walking into, so I don't know much. I just write whatever, you know, I
Can
don't
I
know
ask
those
you
professional terminology.
what your native language is? Is that something you would feel comfortable revealing to us?
No. Oh, my native language is Chinese. I never write. Actually, I never. How to say? I never wrote poetry in my own native language.
Okay, I just want to
Yeah, I
suggest
don't
to
know.
you a wonderful anthology of English poetry translated from the Chinese over, you may know of it already, over, I think, a couple of centuries. It's a pretty encompassing anthology. I think it's called Sunflower Splendor.
Mm.
It's a beautiful anthology of Chinese poetry over the, you know, centuries, including some contemporary poetry translated into English. So it might be of interest to you,
Mhm.
but not to limit you. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Just culturally, it might be an interesting thing for you. Okay, so we look forward to talking to you more and hearing your poetry. Fine, Belle.
Hi there.
Hi there. How do you pronounce your name? Correct me.
Fin, like the fin of a fish, and Bell.
Okay. Finn Bell. Hi.
Hi there. So I really love everything. Right now I am reading Jericho Brown, Martin Espada, Joy Harjo.
Wow.
Those
Okay.
are things that I really love. I try to widen my scope by just checking out titles that are really interesting from the library. I tend to write more experimental, prosy, very freestyle poetry.
Beautiful.
If I were to love a particular form of poetry, it's actually kind of funny and kind of contradictory, that the origin of me writing poetry, what the first kind of poetry that I wrote was, I have this great love for Asian short form. So I really love tanka and I really love haiku, senyu. So I tend to go back and forth between writing those, or I would try to create experimental poetry, sort of like a haibun, where it would be interspersed with poetry and more prose-like material. What is my impetus? I think it's always been that I've had a story, or I'd like to process what I'm going through, what I'm experiencing, you know, what's going on in the world, and what is the form that I do that I make myself understand it. And I found the best way to do that has been through poetry.
Yeah, that's I really empathize with that that impetus. I think that's true for me too. And I think it's fascinating that that there's a story, there's an exploration, there's an experimentalism, and yet also you are drawn to this kind of compact ancient forms. So to me that right there is kind of a contradiction, although there's a lot of wit in and I'm not deeply familiar with that genre, but I know there can be a lot of wit in haiku and in haibun and you know, some of those other forms.
Yeah.
I would suggest Elaine Equi's poetry also to you. On the resources list, I connect to, I think, an interview with her. You might find her interesting. And well, it sounds like you're pretty widely read. You might like Ray Armantrout poetry as well. She may be compelling to you because she's witty and her work is very condensed.
Sounds good. Can you put that second name in the chat, if you don't mind?
Sure. Let's try that. I'll do it right now. Okay. Okay. Actually, I'll put her full name. Ray. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And yeah, I look forward to talking to you more. So I'd like to thank you, everybody. It's really, what an interesting eclectic group and spread out geographically. I think that's really interesting, and that'll be interesting vis-a-vis the one of the exercises, the field trip exercises, because yeah, to see how that can be adjusted to fit your needs and wherever you are. So what I'd like to do is just kind of read what these exercises are, kind of elaborate more on what's in the workshop description. Okay, here we go. Can you all see me? Can you see me and hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because I just scooted my screen across to get to this text, which I've just felt more comfortable reading out loud. So can everybody can hear? Okay. So zones of reception writing forays. There are two approaches to accessing new language and thoughts that may assist you to write refreshed or different poetry that I'd like to offer you tonight. Not to derail you from whatever approaches you are committed to or change your poetry, but to suggest an experimental attitude and experimental practice. You may already use these strategies, or you may not have any complaint about how you're working currently, or you may be committed to your own methods. Well and good. Then please just consider these as possible experiments that you may adjust to fit your poetic needs. And we can talk about that as we kind of process what these experiments are. The first concept is to encourage an attitude of reception. That is to take steps towards attuning your receiving mind and body to every aspect of the environment or environmental frame. And by that, I mean just the place that you're in. Because when we hear the word environment, we tend to think the natural landscape, a very wide natural landscape. That could be the case for you, or it could be, you know, a street that you're on, you're in an environment, but it's a more constrained environment. That is to take steps towards attuning your receiving mind and body to every aspect of your environment or environmental frame through your senses, sight, sound, and olfactory sense of smell and touch. The philosophical attitude behind this strategy is one in which it is felt that the world is trying to dictate poetry to you. Every layer of the ecology and human materials even are pulsing with a kind of information that and language that your mind can notice, endure, explore, and receive while in the poetic mode or language creating mode. So we're kind of putting a line around this attitude of reception. For some poets, they're receptive every minute of the day. You know, they're taking notes while they're at their job. You know, they're cooking. They then gonna write a little poem. I think Emily Dickinson is an example of a poet that worked that way. What I'm suggesting for the rest of us is that we set aside, you know, a time and a place to really cultivate this kind of receptivity, this kind of language creating mode. What I would like to suggest to you is that you cultivate this kind of reception in fresh environments. That is to bring yourself to locations, places, zones that you are unfamiliar with or outside of your usual habits, or even places that are somewhat estranging, where you don't feel fully comfortable. I cannot offer you an exact rationale for how these frameworks elicit language, but it's my experience that if we are receptive to new locations where there is heightened awareness, we may derive new poetry from observing there. I want to ask you to give yourself 2.5 to 3 hours for your field trip. Specifically, if you usually write at home, then go to a cafe, park, or busy street with outside seating somehow available. If you always write in a cafe, then go to a new cafe in a new neighborhood. If you never write on the subway or tram or train line or on the bus, try a long ride to do that. Don't try it driving your car, though. If you always write in the park, then go to a new park or even a bench on a busy street. Once situated, give yourself 45 minutes to an hour to attune to the environment. Assume that every aspect of what you observe, including your cup of coffee, trash, puddles, tree trunks, birds, squirrels, rats, shadows are very communicative, textures are talking to you. Eavesdrop. Listen in on human conversations and incorporate fragments or all of the conversation into your poem. There is a message in what you overhear. Radio noise, music, static even goes by, then attune to those sound waves and see if they might translate into language. After an hour, take a focused walk, listening and observing details from the minuscule to the macro. Try to form poetic talk back to the world. Try to describe to yourself what you see and hear, and be sure to stop and write in your notebook or record in a device for later integration into a text. Now, the writing that may come out of this experiment may be of varied forms: brief glimpses, long lines, mix-ups of conversations and details. How does this kind of receptivity and attunement contribute to a deeper poetry than description? Well, that's where your feelings and sensations and personal response comes in. The poet Jack Spicer famously described a poetry of dictation, but if you read his poetry, it's personal to him. He brings in his body and feelings, and you should also. How you mix it up is personal and is the recipe for your particular brew of poetry. I also suggest Alice Notley's poetry is highly synthesized in this way: the observed detail and the emotional response. In some instances, memories or associations are compelled to come into the poem as we attune. Welcome those intrusions and work at keeping all lines of communication open simultaneously. A field trip, as was just described, is probably, for most of us, only possible once a week or once every 2 weeks. That's fine. Perhaps you might write those poems in a notebook for that purpose if you write with ink. I find the physicality, the scratching out of words, the fluidity of writing with ink and paper conducive to thought, but you may find the clarity and assertion of typing to enhance your writing. The second experiment I want to suggest came to me very early one morning when I just woke up. I was thinking, you know, I think the night before, I'd been thinking for a couple of days about this workshop, and I woke up in the morning and I had this thought that it was important to assist you in protecting your creative zones at home or office. This is a different angle. All of us live amidst others, obligations, uncontrolled intrusions, or incidents. Now, just as you need to receive to encourage reception to the world, taking in what the world presents to you, the poet also needs to filter, to draw boundaries around the creative zone, to make a magic circle of salt, so to speak. Most of us do not have studies in which we go to and shut a door. If you have that, then you may want to modify the following suggestion to fit your situation. I want to ask you to obtain a large piece of decorative paper. I bought one at the paper store, which is a great range of compellingly designed papers for under $10. I want to show you what I mean. I went and I chose this paper to be my new writing surface for, not maybe for every time I write, but for these certain experimental periods. So can you kind of see it? And there's all kinds of papers at the paper store, if you're familiar. You can also order papers online, of course. Set your paper up on your desk or your kitchen table. This is now your mind zone, your poetry creation tablet, your scrying pool. Then set up around, in other words, this is a surface that you would then place your notebook or your laptop in the midst of. Then set up around this paper items that elicit memories, ensure safety, talk to you, little toys, crystals, feathers, a postcard or two, not more, because that would be probably too distracting. Start with 2 at a time. Glass bottles, weird old cups, rocks, matchbooks. So here's some of the objects that I've set up around my writing arena. I found this in a store. I don't know what it is. It's some kind of, I think it may be related to lanterns or fishing. I'm not sure. Here's an old glass. I found this on the street. It's a glass stopper. No, I didn't. I found this in a thrift store. It's a glass stopper for perfume, right? I don't have the perfume bottle, just the stopper. This is obviously a Christmas ornament. I don't know if you can see how rubbed it is and kind of old and tarnished. It's very magical. I found this on the sidewalk maybe 2 weeks after Christmas here in Brooklyn. And here I have a little box with a walnut, a rusted safety pin, and some rocks that a friend gave me, little polished stones. Those are just a few, just an example of these kinds of items. But I think also little toys, plastic soldiers, maybe little dolls, all kinds of oddments can stimulate this kind of language, and also can sort of form a ring around your writing surface as a kind of protective zone. So also photos that are somewhat mysterious. If it's overly determined, say a photograph of your child when they're 5 years old, then you'll not be able to access a story. No one that you know very, very well, because you'll be too, or maybe a grandparent. I would make an exception with that. Experiment with lighting. Bring in a different lamp rather than overhead lighting. Light a candle. Then make available some olfactory possibilities. Smudge paper with that old incense that you have in a drawer. Pile up pine needles or leaves. Bring out 3 essential oils. Don't be afraid to make these available to your sense body for purposes of eliciting memory, new information, imaginary forays, fantasy, that word came up earlier, and the collective unconscious, as Jung phrased it. If you always write at night, then experiment with this setup during the day. If you never write at night, then do your magic circle late at night. You'd have to prepare for this. Take a nap if you're able. The paper zone and objects are the most important elements in this experiment, and as much solitude as possible. But even if others are around you, try and impregnate your writing device within the paper zone as a protected area. Okay. Any thoughts, any responses? Any questions?
I like the field trip. I like how you can go to different park, a cafe or a subway, and just experimental writing, kind of notebook, observing the environment around you.
Mm-hmm.
I like writing out in nature. It's so different to being inside.
Yeah.
And I love how incorporating all the senses and how being wide, like listen to the radio, the music, the static, the sound waves, textures. I like eavesdropping. It's strange what you pick up and how can like merge into your poetry. But like you said, conversation in fragments. You only take what you necessarily need, even though I think what you're saying is the main point is to be receptive, be open to everything around you, and then
Exactly.
interpret it.
That's right.
And I loved your reference to Alice Notley. I have read some of her poetry. I really, really like her, how she engages in her own experience and then gives her own opinion. And
Mhm.
Jack Spicer, I'm not familiar with, but I love how it's about writing my body and feelings.
Concise,
Thank you
she's
so
not.
much. I've made notes. I've got loads. I've filled 3 pages with all the keywords you've mentioned. So thank you so much. I'm being
Oh, very
fluidity,
good. Okay,
and I
and
like the creative zone.
right, that's right. That's what we're talking
Magic
about.
sword protecting your
Personal
creativity. That is
perception.
so important. Yes, yes.
And I think just to elaborate, I mean, you have it
Please.
exactly right, Parv. But
Thank you.
just to say that what we're talking about, you can describe where you are. You can say, "Well, now
Yes.
I'm in the cat." But what I would rather encourage you to do,
Yes.
rather than all of you, as
Yes.
an experiment. I mean, whatever gets you going, go with it. You know, you
Yes.
know best
Works for you.
what works for you or what might
Yes.
work for you, or you might discover something new. But what I'm trying to
Yes.
encourage is more a receptiveness of mind, where rather than you're impressing yourself with your language upon the situation, the landscape, the zone, you're absorbing,
Absorbing.
you're
Yes.
taking in odd things that you notice. You know, you're
Yes.
enhancing your awareness, you're taking in, and then you're letting those elements that you take in kind of speak to you, and then you
Yes.
speak back, which is kind of a subtle difference from description.
Yes.
Although the descriptive words are fantastic, you know, that's
Yes.
my favorite category of language, you know, is
Yes.
descriptive. But does that discernment make sense
Yes.
to people?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. I think on a fundamental level, that's a basic level of like poetry describing something you see in front of you, but to allow yourself to be open and absorb everything around you and allow it to sink into you and then allow it to create something within you that you express backward to the world. Am I in the
Mhm.
right lines?
Right. Finn, what you wanted to say something?
I was just thinking this kind of reminds me, I came across this completely by accident. I know that a lot of us, experience having moments of anxiety or panic, and try to have effective tools in our toolbox to preempt it. So I was told by a friend, and this has been very effective to me. And I would start the morning by doing this. I would concentrate on 3 things that I see just immediately before me. So I would go outside on my porch. I would talk about I would tell myself about 3 things that I hear immediately, and then 3 things that are within my grasp that I feel, even if it's just grounding my feet on the ground, um, you know,
Mhm.
uh, flexing my fingers. The first element, seeing these various things, has really connected, I think, to my writing practice. I normally do it in the morning. I do have this whole ritual where I touch all my crystals and I sage the area, and then I begin writing. But prior to anything, I do that exercise to kind of generally call me for the day. And in these observations, just looking at how different a pine cone was from yesterday. Has it fallen? Is it as happy as it was? I use the term like happy. Was it as happy as it was yesterday? And those kind of unlock other other things that are kind of connected to it. So I guess like a kind of, I guess you could say, a kind of subconscious um, of what I am thinking in the background, what's in the back burner of my mind. It's addressing that by
Beautiful.
by talking to those things, by seeing certain birds. Oh, why didn't this bird visit? what am I really trying to say by that? So I kind of explore that, and just going through those observations both calms me, but also opens myself up to the questions I'm asking the day. I don't know if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. And I think Parv had said that they were familiar with those techniques. I've also heard of them being used therapeutically. And so it sounds like you're already well along in this kind of sensory grounding, as you call it. So that's beautiful. And those are really great techniques. And, it occurs to me that, for some of us, for poets especially, who may have an aptitude for already have an aptitude for attunement to the world, emotionally, you notice details. My God, you're expressing a kind of empathy with a pine cone. Okay, so that's a very highly developed sense of the world and other, right? And you know what, to be that open might lead to anxiety, that your challenges may be something around trying to organize within yourself, when to create a filter, when to let in. I mean, these are, I think I've noticed that poets often have those kinds of challenges. So do you think that either of these two writing experiments will work for you, or something you would want to try? You don't know if they'll work for you because you haven't done them yet.
Yeah, for sure. It did open up something for me when you said about, the length of doing the out of doors
Or a kind of a field
yeah,
trip.
yeah. It did fill me with a little bit of apprehension, having to go out there and expose myself. I am that kind of writer where my introverted little world is my world, and I'm happy in it, and I can create in it. But just both the idea was really it was both thrilling and also kind of like a new source of anxiety, I guess. I said, oh, am I up for that challenge? Can I do that? Okay, I said, okay, I'm gonna try to I'm gonna commit to it. I'm gonna commit to it. So for sure.
Perfect. Yeah. You're not going to want to go to the environment that's estranging. You're going to want to go to an environment where initially you feel safe, that, where a place where you feel safe, but it is outside of your hermetic world. I can very much relate to that. Yeah. And go into an environment or a situation that you feel safe, but where you're going to allow the elements to talk to you, to refresh your poetry and see what comes through. So it'll be, if you were not able to find the right situation during the duration of this workshop, that's okay. We'll trust you to try it later.
Thank you. Okay. I wanted to say that something that you just said, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it was that quandary about us as creatives, as poets, being so so open to the universe, so open to the universe cracking us open, that we do allow for that space to feel and get hurt, more so than than you would think is normal, and being
we can become flooded with information and feeling about
being
things.
so empathetic.
Absolutely.
Can be both a blessing, but yeah.
And well, poetry can be a very, as was said by somebody else in our group here, a very expressive conduit for that, for all of that realm of information, that flood of information, that poetry can express that. I think you said that. Amy, Anne, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I have resisted for a long time constructing a space for myself to work in. I'm in a house now where I get to have my own room for my desk and stuff. And
beautiful.
My resistance was partly because I didn't want it to become so precious and my writing to depend on this space and these surroundings. I wanted to be able to travel and be able to do this anywhere. So this is the way, I mean, this is kind of reminding me there's a balance there that, you know, there's something to be gained from your home base and your comfortable zone, but there's something to be gained from out in the world and, you know, new material, new information.
Right. You may want to experiment with the paper, right? So this paper is like this size. So you probably have a kitchen or a dining room table. So you probably have all your other projects all over the place. So you're gonna set this up. If you go forward with this experiment, you're gonna set this paper up. You're gonna set up your objects around it, and try seeing what comes out of writing in that protected zone. You know, within your home, with all of its projects and its stimulations and its interruptions and your things that you love and are dear to you. And see what that's like to be dependent or to use, maybe that's a better word, use this kind of a little mini arena that you set up. Maybe for you, you don't need, I don't really have a desk that I used to write at either, actually. My desk is filled with stuff, but I have this paper, I set it up on the table. And then so you set up that writings, that kind of magic zone, and see, if that is conducive to writing poetry, and also to experiment with what time of day, if you have the latitude to do that. Anybody else had any thoughts? Yeah, Tim.
Well, we have like 9 or 10 minutes left, so I guess I wanted to point that out.
I'm aware.
I wanted to ask, actually, and this is kind of a different topic altogether. In your message, you invited people to send you poems. Is that correct?
Sure. That's in my email.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to
my email
confirm
is
that.
in the list of resources. And then
Right.
what I will try to do is, I'll respond in writing and email you all back. Are we allowed, am I allowed to have access to people's emails? I can't remember. I haven't looked carefully at the roster.
Yes, you can.
Okay, good. So send me your poems, and then by next Wednesday, I will have sent them back, probably that day. I'll send back a written response to your poetry. Because I just don't know if there'll really be time in the limited time that we have to do a really in-depth response to your work. I think we will have time for everybody to read, hopefully, some poems that might come out of these two experiments. But I'm very willing, if you care to send me your poetry, no more than 8 poems, but as little as 1 or 2, and I'll write a response, I'm wondering, Connie, how you feel the first exercise will work in a kind of more larger environment, as I imagine an Alaskan environment is. I don't know if Connie's still with us. She may have stepped away. Is there anybody else that sort of has a feeling like they're not sure how they can attune to the environment if your space that you're in usually is very large? Shall I put my email in the chat? Okay. Okay, it's also in the resources page that's in the materials folder. You guys may not have had a chance to look at that yet. Okay, so here's my email.
And has everybody had a chance to look at the Google Drive space where this information is? There's some resources that look really valuable, but do let us know if you're unable to access the Google Drive. The permissions that sometimes it requires to get into these things, blocks people. So please do let us know. Do check it out, because there are a couple of documents there that have very important information.
I tried to offer, just a list of, a book that I think is the best. I mean, I'm being repetitive because I say it in the document as well, but it's called Prompt Book I think experiments and I can't remember the full title off the top of my head, but anyway, it's available on Amazon. It's by Barbara Henning. And it's just a really, really, and from the things that a few of you have said, Lee and Finn, I think all of you, Parv, will find some of the writings, I think, especially for those of you who like to look at prose writings. Prompt Book has examples of sort of prose poetry and I'm gonna say microfictions, but all kinds of kind of short descriptive writing, but she assembles these examples and ties them into various prompts, and it's just a really wonderful book. So I recommend that. And also I have the very famous Bernadette Mayer writing experiments. Those are tried and true. She came up with those, I think, in the 70s. She's no longer with us, but they're great. And then, as I said, the poets that I thought of were poets that I thought kind of mix up receptivity to the landscape, to nature, to just wherever they are. They kind of have a certain receptivity and they mix it up with their own language and their own internalization in interesting ways. I mean, there's lots and lots of poets out there that do a lot of different things, but I just thought these people might be of interest to you. And I thought better than just a link, to a bunch of books where you can research that yourself. I tried to link to interviews with people, so you sort of got a sense of their personalities. And if there's a kind of poetry you're looking for, or poets who do a certain kind of thing that you want to explore, ask me and I'll try to think of some suggestions for you. Connie, I was wondering if you had a feeling how that first exercise would work for you in a kind of the Alaskan landscape, which is kind of, I'm imagining, more natural, more wide, how going out and attuning to shadows and people and coffee and how that will work for you. Is that something that you'd be able to try?
I'm not much into that. I don't walk very well anymore, so I don't tend to go out very much.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I can see where it would work. And certainly I know that I get different feelings when I look out different windows from the house.
That's right. Do you go into your porch or outside at all?
Yeah, I go out on the
Okay.
porch and that kind of thing. But yeah,
Okay.
it's certainly different when you're looking at different things. And
That's
of
right.
course, you can go different places with a computer. That's the magic of the computer, is you can
That's
go
right.
anywhere.
That's right. Notebooks work well too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope to encourage you if you're able to take a field trip with a friend, can assist you. But the main thing is we're really talking about attunement of mind. Just if anything you take away from today, and I'm taking away some of the things that you all have said, by the way, some really interesting things that all of you are trying. In ways that you describe your impulses in poetry and your impetus for writing. If there's anything you take away, it's the phrase, the world is talking to you. The world is trying to dictate poetry to you. That would be the core idea. I think we're at a close, right? Tim, I can't hear you.
Yeah, there we go. It took a while to find the unmute button. Yeah, thanks, Kim. Thanks for being our workshop leader tonight. Thank you, all you participants. We'll be back again 1 week from tonight, 7 Eastern time, which I can't even imagine what time that is in England or Alaska for that matter. But 7 Eastern time next Wednesday, the 22nd. And
late at night, I believe.
right.
Yeah. Okay.
So thanks again. And I don't know, Amy Joy, I guess we'll end the meeting here and we'll see you all next time. And thanks again.
All right. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, YouTube Live.
Thank you. Thank you.